Hello, in this chapter we're going to focus on statically equivalent systems. So a statically equivalent system is a system where the forces and the moments are going to cause the same effects. So if two different sets of forces and moments would cause the same reaction forces, or they would cause the same both linear and angular accelerations, those two sets of forces are known as statically equivalent systems. And they're basically interchangeable for statics problems. So what do we do with sets of forces that are statically equivalent? We've got two ways that we kind of build on this idea. So the first, we're going to work on simplifying systems. And so before that, we want to talk about what's known as the resolution of a force into a force in a couple. So any force, if we want to find a statically equivalent version of that, that's in a different location, we can use this process. And so the resolution of a force, basically we move the force, but that's going to change the moment. And remember, a pure moment is called a couple. It's a set of equal and opposite forces, so it has no net force, but it does cause a moment. And so if I move the force, I'm going to wind up kind of correcting the point of application with a couple that I add to the system. So if I want to have some set of forces and I want to simplify it, I use this resolution of a force to find the equivalent force couple system. So with the equivalent force couple system, I kind of take all these different forces that are acting at all these different locations, all these moments, and I'm going to move them all using the resolution of a force into a force in a couple to a single point. Once I have everything acting at a single point, I can sum them up basically to find a single force and a single couple, a pure moment, that is going to be equivalent to a much larger and more complex system. And so using this process, we can simplify more complex systems into very simple systems that consist of one force and one couple. All right, so also for statically equivalent systems, we're going to use this with distributed forces. So forces, we can break down into point forces and distributed forces. And for distributed forces, if we want to add things up that have distributed forces on it, involve calculus, it's very difficult. Generally in statics, we convert distributed forces into their equivalent point load. And their equivalent point load is a single point force that's going to be statically equivalent to the distributed force itself. So we are basically converting that more complicated load into a more simple load that we can deal with in our math and deal with for static equilibrium. So the equivalent point load, we're also going to be looking kind of carefully at centroids. So centroids and the equivalent point load calculations are very simple. We can kind of go back and forth and use centroids as a method for finding the equivalent point load. So that is what we're going to cover in the statically equivalent systems chapter of this book. Thank you for listening.